Hello YouTube, welcome back to the Basement Card Collector. Today's video is going to be our 9th episode of our Magic Number series. The 9th episode is going to focus on a year, and the year is going to be 1930. Thank you for the arts department here at the world headquarters of the Basement Card Collector for that sweet 1930 logo for us. This episode really got started by me running down a little rabbit hole of my Chicago Cubs collection. I thought it would be cool to have a playing days card of every MVP that the Chicago Cubs have ever had. So joining us on the stage here, you see Mr. Andre Dawson, 1987 MVP. Mr. Ernie Banks, he actually won back-to-back MVPs. He's the only two-time winner. He won it in 58 and 59. And then Mr. Chris Bryant there to the side of Mr. Ernie Banks. He was the 2016 MVP. So as I'm looking, there are 10 players, there are 11 winners in the Cubs history. And for most folks, I have to dig out, like, the first winner, his name is Frank Schulte in 1911. I'm going to need to find a reprint card. And Rogers Hornsby was the 1929 MVP. And so I'm going to need one of those similar types of cards to make that collection be complete. So I'm running down the list, and I have the recent guys, of course, Sammy Sosa, Ryan Sandberg, Dawson, of course. And so I'm looking through there, I'm thinking, where's Hack Wilson? Hack Wilson is not on this list, which is where this video's story kind of took place. And I got to digging, I'm thinking, how did Hack Wilson not win an MVP in 1930? You know, that's the year that he had all those RBIs, 191 of them. He had a National League record for home runs that year with 56. He hit 356. So that got me reading online and looking at different sites. Baseball Reference, we love that site. Wikipedia, all kinds of sites and stories. I watched some videos on YouTube, just was reading some things. I'm thinking, how did he not win in 1930? Let's look at this. The 1930 season, we're gonna hit the pause on 1930. Let's rewind to the back to where the MVP started, because that's what got me thinking about the MVPs and so on. So let's rewind back to the beginning of the MVP award. The MVP originated with an award called the Chalmers Award, and I'd never heard of that. Actually, I was watching a video from our buddy Scott at Reindeer Studios, and he had a book called, or that, you know, kind of focused on this Chalmers Award, and it was given away from 1911 to 1914. Well, the Chalmers, it was a type of automobile back in the day, and the owner said he would give a Chalmers car to the person that had the highest batting average for that season. Well, it came down to a race between a guy named Ty Cobb and a Cleveland player, Nap Lajoie. And on the last day, Nap had 7 bunt hits to win the actual batting average crown, okay? But instead of, I guess, you know, doing what he said he would do, give one card to the winner, he actually gave a card to Ty Cobb and to Nap Lajoie. And so I don't know, and it just had a very hot debate on who should get this award. So it was only 3 or 4 years, and then they switched over in 1922. It was just called the League Award. Let's set this Ty Cobb up here for a minute. It was called the League Award. So from 1922 to 1929, winners were voted on by a committee similar to today's MVP award, but there were only 8 people on this panel. And you could only win from the period of 1922 to 1929, you could only win one time. So when you look back from those years, Babe Ruth had 1 MVP. Lou Gehrig had 1 MVP. Now, after the 29 season, they readjusted the voting rules and how to win and who could win. So during that span, though, that's why you see some of those all-time greats that only have one MVP during that time frame. They changed the rules in 1929, and in 1930, they actually did not have the MVP as we know it today. The MVP process in which we now kind of live in 2023, that process started in 1931. Okay, so the award was given out from 22 to 29, skip 1930, and then in 1931 until present day, the Baseball Writers Association has taken care of the MVP, and there was a small window where they gave away one award, and eventually they started giving out an AL winner and an NL winner. So back to 1930, Hack Wilson. Actually, before I get into those cards, looking through my reprint box, I have a big box of just I call them reprints. They're non-playing day cards of just past heroes, and I just grabbed a couple just to kind of show. We have the all baseballs all-time greats, the orange version. There's Jackie, there's Lou, and there's Ty Cobb again. And in that little box I have, they also made a green version. There's Billy Williams, Cubby's great. We have some of the baseball greats. Here's a Herb Score on the Swell card. And like we mentioned before, here is that Rogers Hornsby on a different Swell version, but there's Tony Oliva. So, and I love these kind of sets. They have cards of those past former, like for example, former greats. Cy Young. I'm never going to get a Cy Young card. Some of those TO6 and TO5, whatever else they call them. I'm never going to have one of those, and that's okay. But I rely on some of these kinds of sets. Well, as I'm digging, looking for a Hack Wilson card or two, I'm thinking, I have most of these sets, and I did not see him in. Now, I don't have all of this Swell set, but I have the green and the orange and some of the baseball greats. These are the pitchers, of course. He wouldn't be in there, but I didn't find his card, so he may have them. I just was kind of shocked that I didn't have more. And so the largest reprint set I have is this gray. They were just called the Baseball Legends. I think they came out in 91, I think. Maybe, I don't know, 89 or 90, somewhere in there. But these are the Cubs. And they made, former players that were, there's Leo, he was a manager. Here's Chuck Connors, who later on was an actor. Some players actually had two cards. There's Billy. I think that's like Series 1 or Series 2 maybe. I don't remember. Ken Holtzman was pretty good little pitcher. Bert Hooton. Glenn Beckert was great. Randy Hundley got a card. So I'm just saying they make a lot of the greats. But then some people, now this is not a knock against Willie Wilson. He was really good for a really long time. But as far as the all-time greats, I'm not sure anybody's putting Willie Wilson. And again, I love Willie Wilson. He actually was a Cubby for a second. I'm just saying, in that set, I did not find a Hack Wilson card. And then I found a couple shinier cards that were kind of cool. Some of these SP Authentic, some of the newer cards that depict the former players on just kind of a new kind of card stock. There's a Jimmy Fox, pretty sweet. And then so I finally did find a couple players. Here's a pretty cool shiny Rogers Hornsby. And again, this is a very new, one of those diamond anniversary cards, but he was one of those MVPs like we talked about in 1929 for the Cubs. And then we find the Conlon collection. Here's a Babe Ruth card. Of course, this is going to be my own. I have a couple Babe Ruth cards like this, some of these reprint cards. But when I finally got to digging, I did finally come across two Hack Wilson cards from that same set. One in his Hall of Fame induction year, and in a nickname set, the nickname Hack. So we're going to display the Hacks for this video. I did find a pretty cool card, a Fleer Greats card, And here he is on the Brooklyn Dodgers. Love those cards. But the coolest one for sure is this one, similar to the Jimmy Fox. Same set, great looking photo. Love that gold foil. We're gonna put him front and center here. Okay, so about Hack Wilson, let me give you some stats on Hack Wilson. From the time span of 1926 to 1930, he led the league in home runs 4 out of 5 years. He led the league in RBIs 2 out of those 5 years. He also batted .321, .318, .313, which are, those are really good. How about 1929? .345. He hit 39 home runs and had 159 RBIs, and that was the season that Hornsby won the MVP in 1929. Okay, well, the next year he comes back in 1930, the year that we're trying to explain or trying to bring a little more light to. And if you knew that out there, congratulations. I was just dumbfounded that he didn't win an MVP. And when I listen to this stat for 1930, he hit .356, 208 hits, 35 doubles, 56 home runs, 191 RBIs. Technically it's 190, but some sports writer several decades later was kind of reading and checking some facts and checking some game box scores, and was actually credited with an extra RBI to bump that total up to 191 RBIs. And so out of all the years to have a no MVP award, I just feel terrible for this guy. It was one of those best seasons you could ever imagine, and there was no legit MVP. There were a couple, like, newspaper kind of gave away some awards, but even then I think they were split between 3 or 4 people, depending on who you asked, probably depending on what city the writer was from. Even some of that still happens today. But so as I'm reading through, and again, I just made a little checklist of some really cool stats. He is listed at 5 feet 6 inches. He still, as of the articles that I was reading, he has the most home runs ever for somebody 5'6" or shorter. And then his career kind of flamed out in a big way. The Cubs kind of got tired with some of his during game and after the game, but he was known for being a bit of a partier and was pretty rough with some fans. He had several stories online about how he would try to fight. He ran into the dugout to try and fight a whole team once. He had some instances with some fans at bars. Just a pretty rough player, it sounds. And again, that's not all wrong, but it just kind of caught up to him. His career just really went downhill, and it should have been in his peak years, and he just really never really panned out. His career wasn't all that long. I think it was 12 years total. And really, the way his life ended is just very sad. And so, if nothing else, when I think of Hack Wilson, and you as well, you probably think of the RBI record, and rightfully so. That is a mark that's not really been even close to. I think the modern day player is Manny Ramirez. I think he had 156 or 165, something like that, which is a huge number, and that was still 30 RBIs short. We did find a Hank Greenberg card. And again, that's one of those Fleer Greats cards. He was the closest. He has the second highest ribby total, 183. You can see there, 1937. I mean, again, he is obviously very good, but 180 ribbies, that's a massive number, but even then, that's still 10 short. And so when I was reading what happened to him after his career, it was very sad, followed by just another sad story. And he had some bad business decisions, they say, and some things went bankrupt, and he lost a lot of money. He was working as a tool checker. He was later promoted to like a pool supervisor in the city of Baltimore. He died. At one point, he had signed a pretty big contract during his heyday, and it said that he died penniless. There had been an issue in the family where even when he did pass away, his son would not, come and take credit for him to kind of give him a proper burial. So his body actually lay, what's the word? His body just, no family member would come and to, take care of things. So the commissioner back then, Ford Frick, actually paid money to the mortuary and the burial services. He paid for that. They said it was a donated suit. And so I'm just thinking, man, how can that be? This is Hack Wilson. But he died penniless. Nobody from his family was interested. Hardly anybody came to the funeral. And in fact, Babe Ruth had just died a few months earlier than Hack Wilson. Now granted, Babe Ruth is as big as they come, but he was very, very much loved by everybody, and Hack Wilson just a few months later, and it was basically unattended just by a very, very few number of people. And so when it says 1 month, I just like to read this little poem that kind of wrap up the Hack Wilson story. Hack Wilson, 1 month before he passed, gave an interview to a CBS radio station. In 1949, it was put up in the Cubs locker room by the manager Charlie Grimm. Listen to this poem. Listen to the interview that was given to Hack Wilson here. Just listen to his answer. This is Hack Wilson describing his own career 1 month before he passed. Talent isn't enough. You need common sense and good advice. If anyone tries to tell you different, tell them the story of Hack Wilson. Kids in and out of baseball who think because they have talent, they have the world by the tail. It isn't so. Don't be too big to accept advice. Don't let what happened to me happen to you. That's a quote from Hack Wilson himself. And the story that I read says it's still posted in the locker room today. So I don't know if that's true, but it's just a big warning sign for just baseball players in general, and really just in life for that matter. But so to review, 1930, there wasn't an MVP award. In the seasons of seasons to not have an award, Hack Wilson set many records that stood for a very long period of time. He was for those Chicago Cubs. He did play on a couple teams, but I just thought, man, 1930, he should have been the MVP. And he isn't, and it really is just for a little break in time where the MVP award just wasn't given out like it is today. That is going to do for my magic numbers, the 9th episode in this series of 1930 in the Hack Wilson story. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.